Hello, everyone. How are you? So glad to welcome you to Openly Gray Life and our new series called Home, A Quest for Meaning. This is our first in a series of conversations that we'll be having with people who are thinking about whether home is a place that they're returning to, whether home is a place that they're finding reconnection to, or making new homes. We're excited about that. Now, here's the thing. I started thinking about this conversation a long time ago when I thought about the fact that as an aging person, as a person who is gracefully moving through this journey, that there was real sense for me at least of nostalgia. I started to long for the things that made me feel whole and connected and complete. And so much of that had to do with going home. And so going home for me, and on this version of this episode, um, has been about returning to my ancestral home, which is St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So I'm coming to you live and direct from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I'm so excited to be sharing this particular journey with the person who came with me the first time I ever came here for an extended period of time and called it home. And that is my sister, Nicole. So she'll be joining us today, and we're going to have a conversation about what it means to be home, what home means. And I hope you'll come along for the ride and it gives you something to think about. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Nicole to the conversation. Welcome, Nicole. Hey there. How are
Hey,
you? Good to see you. Long
good to
time.
see you too.
So, um, this is a new series that we're talking where we're talking about home, and I guess I'd like to just start off by asking, what does home mean to you?
Well, I think when people ask what does home mean to you, it always brings up these kind of corny connotations. Like I want to say something like home is where the heart is, and stuff like that. Like I'm a 1980s, you know, deep dish pie commercial. However, I think for me, home is more about a place where I feel comfortable to be myself, to exist in my reality. And home can be a variety of places. When someone says to me, make yourself at home when I come to their house, sometimes I find people mean it, but they don't mean it in the way that defines home for me. Like if you say make yourself at home and then I immediately go upstairs, strip off my clothes, jump in your bed and start watching TV, eating or whatever, that could be
Hold,
what home means
hold
to
on
me,
there.
but not to someone else. Right.
Right.
So I think at its most basic level, home for me means someplace that I can go in and I can open the fridge and I can use the stove and nobody needs to serve me. I can just take care of myself. That's what home means for me.
Right. Okay. That's fair enough. So, I'd like to talk a little bit about what it means for you to be like how we got here. Like so we're both in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and for me
Yes.
it's I mean I was here 3 months ago, so that's a relatively short period of time to have been away from home. But for you, it's been quite a stint since you've been here. Can you talk to me about that?
Well, it's it hurts me to say, and I got to be honest and be like, yes, there is a lot of pain behind this answer because I have not been home in 25 years. I have not been to St. Vincent in 25 years. And anybody that knows me knows that I am one of the strongest advocates for Vincentian culture. I present myself as a Vincy everywhere I go. I'm like, yes, Vincy Massive, Vincy Posse, Vincy this, Vincy that. I strongly identify as a Vincentian person, but yet I have not been here in 25 years. And there's a sense of shame. There's a sense of re-questioning my life purposes. I mean, it's been a really hard journey. I've been here for 2 weeks now, and I have maybe another week to spend here. But I think the first week was just grappling with being back and imposter syndrome and what have I been doing, like questioning all the decisions I've made in my life that have removed me from this place that I claim is home.
I feel you on that. I feel you on that. And I mean, I can't, I definitely wouldn't attempt to tell you how to feel, but I would say, extend yourself some grace. There are so many reasons that people don't get home. Some of it is just life, right? Like life happens, and life in North America makes it sometimes virtually impossible to reconnect in those ways. So, grace for yourself.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not a person that's always about like, yes, be extra hard on yourself. But I think when I'm trying to extend myself grace, part of me is like, be kind to yourself, extend grace. And the other part of me is like, you don't even deserve it. You don't even deserve that grace because why why is it that people can find their way any place in the world? Like any number of people can find their way to St. Vincent and be languishing on beaches and doing all of this touristy stuff, and they can prioritize that. But I could not prioritize for myself getting home because there was always something that needed to be done. And yes, there's bills and that need to be paid, and yes, the lights and the gas need to be kept on, and all of that is important. But even at this stage of my life where you reflect on things, I ask myself, was it important enough to keep me away from home? Did I do right by my home? And I honestly don't think that I did. I've been to Africa. Africa cost what it would have cost me to come home 4 times. And we all want to go to the motherland. I mean, I don't regret that I went there, but I'm saying that if I could have the wherewithal to make time and to find money to do that, I could have come home.
Right. So yeah, and I would love to go to the motherland. And so yeah, I feel you on that. So um can I ask what kept you from home?
A lot of the things that I said, which is again, that's the minutiae or whatever that word is. That's on a tiny level, but on a much deeper level, what kept me away from home was not feeling at home.
Mm,
So the last time I came here in 1997, it was a very challenging trip because it was the first trip that I made to St. Vincent since the death of our aunt, and our aunt lived in the home that we grew up in, which was our home. But after she died, the home was not left to us. It wasn't left to anyone in our family. It was left to her husband's family because it was his home. It was his house. He owned the house. But to us, it was a home, even though it didn't belong to us. So coming back in 1997 and not being able to stay at the home that we had grown up in was a very traumatic experience for me.
right.
And
I remember that.
nowadays, everybody wants to talk about trauma. There's so many different types of trauma and triggers and this and that. But I'll tell you, in 1997, we did not have any language for that. I just knew that the experience of coming here and having to stay in somebody else's house where I couldn't touch anything, I couldn't get up in the morning and make my own breakfast, I couldn't, do any of the things that I used to be able to do. Like I had to ask permission to put my hand on anything. It was worse than staying in a hotel, to be honest. I feel I would have had more autonomy. I had to ask before I could, touch the phone. The person we were staying with
Right.
locked
We
up
didn't have cell phones
everything, like it was a very startling change to how I had grown up here. And when I left here at the age I was then, I felt very strongly that, okay, I am never coming back here unless I can come home. It's not the country, it's the home of being, it's the feeling of being at home. I was like, I don't want to do this again. So, you know, leaving with a declaration like that, but still so immature that I didn't have a plan for how that was actually going to happen. I left here and I just went about my own life. Like I got married, I had kids, and I kept thinking like somewhere in here I've got to make time to figure out how I'm going to get home. But I knew that I didn't want to be here if I didn't have a way to just be here. But the older you get, the more you realize that on some level you have to humble yourself. Like I need to humble myself and know that I can't make a home for myself or my children in the place that I call home if I don't first come here and slosh through the uncomfortableness to create something for us.
So tell me how it felt landing. Like the plane's coming down, you touch, because I know the first time I came home, when it touched, I shed a tear. Like touchdown, you see it. Tell me about
Because
that
you
moment.
would do something like that, right? That is so not that is so not anything I
Oh,
would do. Like again, I shed a tear when the wheels touched down. I didn't do that.
people cheered on the
Um,
plane. People were like, "Woo!"
yeah, they always did that. I think I was happy that people still clap when the plane lands, but I was already in a state of everything is so different. Everything was different from the time I got to the airport in Canada to the time that I landed here. Everything was different. Everything is automated. And it was my first time taking a flight directly to St. Vincent. So I
Right.
missed that part of, changing planes in a larger island. I missed changing planes in Trinidad. And then, coming down on the Liat. I don't care what anybody says. I miss Liat. I miss, people tying up cardboard boxes with string to bring whatever they want on the plane. I miss that. Like everything was so, yeah, polished, like even our luggage is extremely polished. Everybody had suitcase cases. I didn't see one grip. You need a
Right.
grip that is closed up the slash on the side with like electrical tape or something. Like I want to see a grip with a ham that you're not supposed to bring that is melting, and
Right.
then I want somebody to fight at the gate with the immigration people to explain why they absolutely must bring this ham into the country. Like I got none of that.
No.
Everybody was so
It's very
orderly.
sterilized. It was very organized and sterilized.
Yeah, it was so, yeah, I was like, really, we're not going to argue? Like, not one fight broke out at the gate on the way there. Nobody was late. Everybody lined up. I mean, the most out of the way thing that happened on to get on the plane to begin with was uh I don't know your audience, so I'm just going to speak try to be kind of polite, but there were a lot of non-Caribbean people on the plane. Can we say that?
Yeah, let's say that.
There were a lot
Transparent
of
there. Yeah.
like what's the polite word for colonizers? There was a lot of foreigners on the plane, so to
Foreigners.
speak. Foreigners, yes. There were a lot of visitors on the plane. And I think after 25 years, even these visitors have been to St. Vincent more than I am. So here I am grappling with me looking at them like, what are you doing here? And then there was a visitor Canadian woman, a non-melanated Canadian woman standing in the line arguing with two Vincentian women about when is the best time to get mangoes in St. Vincent, like when is the best mango season. And she's arguing with them, two local Vincentian women with the whole accent and everything. And this non-melanated, her I will call a colonizer. This colonizer is going to argue with them. And I was looking at this whole thing like, if you don't get your Wikipedia searching self out of this place, but like it's it's okay. I'm like, I have to humble myself to this new reality of foreigners knowing about St. Vincent because 25 years ago, I find that we were still largely untouched. Like where those days, I would say, oh, my family's from St. Vincent. And they would say, what part of Jamaica is that?
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
But now if I say, my family is from St. Vincent, and someone will say, oh, yes, my fiance has a summer home down there, Irie.
Uh, okay, Irie.
Yeah,
Got it.
right. So all of that was precluded my landing in St. Vincent, and then also landing at the new airport.
The new airport. Yeah.
Yes, the new international airport. I was like, my mouth was open the entire time I got off the plane. Like I walked through the tunnel that takes you from the plane to the airport, where I'm used to coming down the actual stairs of the plane and walking across the tarmac to get to the building. So here
Right.
we're like, okay, we've definitely come up. If you have to call it coming up, we've come up in 25 years.
Right.
Um, But the hardest thing I feel was coming off the plane and then having to stand in line with the
Visitors.
regular folks, stand in line with the commoners. I could not go to the VIP line with the other Vincentians because my passport had expired. So here, all the other Vincentians were going with their Vinci passports to the local line. I loved going to the local line. I missed the local line. So here I was standing with all of these people that I was like, oh, the foreigners. And then I come and I'm in the line with foreigners. That's embarrassing, you know?
Well, yeah, I hear you on that. So, wow, it seems like that was a bit of a journey. So you get out, you step outside, feel different, look different. What's different?
Well, like I said, the airport was different. The sun was the same. The vans and like getting on in a car. We had a hired car to take us to the home of your friend who we're staying with, and driving through to get to her home was like, again, it was a lot because we drove in completely the opposite direction that we would normally drive if we were going back to our home. So it just further solidified that we were not going home. And we drove past the old airport, which I was like, wow, it's a shopping mall
No, we
of
didn't
sorts.
on our way there from the airport. We wouldn't have passed the airport yet, but we have the next day
Yeah, I
we did
mean,
pass.
the next
Yeah,
day we passed the actual
as
airports.
well.
But yeah,
Mhm.
when we drove to her house, I could just see all of the new things that had built up. And there was about 5,900, 622 gajillion cars.
Yeah,
That was the biggest
that's
difference.
new.
I was like,
That's new for me
traffic?
as well. Like, so yeah, that's very new. Just because when we were here together the last time, every day we walked into town. So walking into town was kind of our practice. Now our biggest threat at that time seemed to be dogs
Yeah.
in 1997. Now it seems to be cars.
What was interesting for me is remembering that when we came in 1997, we came for Carnival. So I'm thinking about the songs that were written about that
Oh
time. And what I
wow.
love about soca in general, but Vincentian soca in particular, a lot of it just talks about, makes music of what is going on in the world right now. And right that summer, Sketal, Boom Boom, Sketal coming, Boom Boom, Boom Boom was a big song talking
Absolutely.
about the sheer number of white Toyotas that were being unloaded in the country and how this was becoming a problem. 40 more sketals coming for me and you about all the cars. So it's not to say there weren't cars here before, but the singer was just talking about like, wow, this is wild that everywhere you turn, there's a car and a car and a car. After 25 years, I could definitely see that his concerns had come to fruition. Like
So
there are
I
just
guess you don't.
a lot of cars.
I guess you don't have any sort of deep analytical thought about the Calypso Postman then.
Uh, no,
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
unless it comes up in the yeah, no, no,
No.
we're not.
Okay.
One of
That
my
was
favorites, but I'm not talking about that one now. We'll.
okay.
But we also could talk about is what was the other big song? It was Kentucky, morning,
Kentucky.
noon, and night, Kentucky.
That's right. That
Right.
was
When
that
I
gets
came in '97, there was
one.
I think there was still just the one. I mean, it was here when I came in '92. It had just recently opened, one Kentucky. Now there's a lot of Kentuckys. There's even a Subway, a Subway sandwiches, not a Subway because it would be in the sea. But
Right.
yeah, I'm glad to see that there's still not like a McDonald's or a Walmart or anything like that that would be totally taking away from the local economy as it were. But I was also glad to see that there's a lot more restaurants, like locally owned,
Local restaurants, and I've really
culinary
enjoyed that.
experiences.
Yeah, you know, as an island, there's just great fish, fresh fish, all of that. So enjoying that has been good, and seeing, so there is a few developments. We passed, I think, a Holiday Inn Express is coming up, and sandals and beaches, but I think for the most part, yeah, supporting local business. I love to see that here. That's the one thing that never gets old for me. Is just and for me too. I think when you talk about visitors coming, non-melanated visitors, there's also a sense of not having being in a space that's not centered in whiteness.
Hmm.
That feels real, like it feels really good for me, because I think a lot of times, even when you live in a predominantly black community, um, you can be rooted in that, and this doesn't feel like that for me, at least.
Yeah, that reminded me of something that our mother said in 2008. 2008, when Obama was elected president in the United States, and everybody was so excited. It was, what was it, November the 4th or something like that? And we were all like jumping up and down, like, there's a black president. There's finally a black president in our lifetimes. And I went to mom, like, Mom, aren't you excited? She was like, excited for what? She did not get it because she has not lived anywhere where it's like the idea of a black president is not something new or exciting to my mother, because that is her life. Her life is black prime minister, black doctors, black dentists, black shop owners, black taxi drivers, black surgeons, black nurses, whatever it is, it's always been black. It's been, you know, there's no sense that whiteness is better or that whiteness is the standard of expertise that we should be going for. It just is. We are
But
just here in
I mean, I found
existing
that
in our reality.
right, when mom sent us back here to live, because I think we talk about the trip in 1997, but we actually came to live in St. Vincent, which is how for me this became home, right? In 1976, mom sent us to live with our great great aunt, because at the time mom was trying to finish her degree, do her work, and in terms of having as a person who was a new immigrant, in terms of having a community of people around her like she had here to support her and her children, she didn't have that. So the easiest thing at that time was to send us here. And so I think about how I know it had a profound effect on me coming to a space like this at that age. So I came back to Canada and I show up in my life in that way because of this experience, as developmentally, as for this experience as a 7 year old. As a 7 year old, seeing that, it changed how I see the world. How was that experience in 1976 for you, or three?
See, and here you're putting my age out in the streets, and I'm only accepting it just because I know I look so good.
There you go.
So, and it's so good. I think the difference for me as a toddler was that I didn't have a sense of even what Canadian life was like yet. All I knew was home, right? I hadn't started school. I wasn't coming into this like, oh, whiteness is this and blackness is that. I didn't have any of that. I just knew I went from home to home. Um, and for me, what I was looking for was nurturing. And I think what I mostly got out of being here in St. Vincent was to see the consistency of culture. So I didn't have that thing where you go from home into a foreign environment with different rules and different people. So when I started school, it was like school was home because everybody there looked like me, had the same values as my mother. I would go home, and home and school were not different. The teachers were community. The teachers knew your parents, they knew where you lived. If you cut up in school, they were going to know about it even before you got home. And that was without telephones, right? Like
Right.
everybody knew as you walk in the street, people, if you don't know them, they certainly know
Oh
you.
yeah.
So I know that shaped my decisions when I had my own children. My children attended Afrocentric schools growing up because I wanted them to have that same sense of consistency. I didn't want them to go to some place where people who didn't share our values or didn't respect our culture, even if it's not share your values, but at least people who are not going to act like if you have an accent, then there must be something wrong with you, or your parents are not smart because they come from the Caribbean. I didn't want any of that for my kids. I didn't want them to feel any shame or any second class citizenship or third world perspectives on our culture. My
Right.
mother was the smartest woman I knew, and all of the teachers that were in my mother's life and community, even in Canada, always made me feel as though our knowledge was just as good as anybody else's knowledge, you know? So when I'm in Toronto and I see like, okay, I have a black doctor. I'm not with this. Where'd you get your diploma from? Where'd you get your medical degree from? Cuba? Listen, it would be a blessing to have your doctor get their medical degree from Cuba. So being here taught me to consistently elevate our own expertise as top of the line, not
Absolutely.
as third world and secondary to other experiences elsewhere.
Yeah, and it never felt like that to me ever. Growing up, being here now, feeling reconnecting, that sense of community, because for me, that's what it was. Like, I feel here, my name doesn't even matter. When I walk through town, everybody knows who I belong to. So, I mean, I have the face of my mother, so people will say, "Oh my gosh, that's Sandra child," or that is Kava child, Bong Sokano. Like we have those experiences. It feels good to belong to something and to someone. And for me, when we talk about home, that piece of feeling like you belong to something, you're connected to something. So going forward, now that you've made it here, what is it like? This is what we didn't touch on. Would like to. When you came here the last time, it's not just the time that you spent away. You were significantly younger. I'm also not going to put that out there, but you were like half the age you are now.
Yeah,
What is it like for you as a woman in at this stage of your life being here? Like being here as your age, your stage. We're openly gray.
I feel it's validating, um, but it's also reflective, right? Like my feelings about being home are everything that I remembered them to be, right? So when I'm at home, I've always said to my family for years, like when I'm in St. Vincent, everything about me is better. My skin feels better. My hair is better. I eat better. I move better. I feel looser. I feel alive and I feel comfortable. And not just because like, okay, when I come here, I'm on vacation and I don't have to work. That's not the main thing about it. But the main thing is just being surrounded by a validating culture that says you are okay, which is different than how I show up in the world in Canada, where I always have to explain everything about myself. Another example I can give you of how that kind of thing can exist in North America is that my husband was working in a cultural program for a nonprofit organization where everybody that he worked with was Black and either African or Caribbean Black, whereas I was working in an environment, and I still do, where I'm like one of maybe one or two
One
Black people
one.
there, and usually it's one and it's just me. So when I come to work and someone says to me, how was your weekend, what did you do this weekend, mostly I'll just say nothing special. Or I could be like, oh, well, the children and I went to this event, and then I'll have to explain what this event is. Or I went to a concert and I saw Cool in the Gang, and then I have to explain who is Cool in the Gang. We had roti for dinner. Luckily, I don't have to explain what is roti, because now most um, non-Caribbean people in my office know about roti. And oh yeah, I know a great place to go and get some roti and jerk chicken. And I don't even want to have that conversation with them. So home is a place where you don't have to explain everything
Oh my.
about yourself, or nothing about you needs to be that special or outstanding. Or, I mean, people don't look at you and say, what's going on with your hair today? It's just a place where you can be.
You can just
So
be.
yeah,
Yeah.
so at this age, I think it's validating to know that it still feels so good to be home, but it's also reflective and a little sad, because I realized that in the 25 years, this is a home that I've denied my children.
Mm.
And I really have a lot of lost time to make up for, because I need to ensure that the legacy of home, that it is as meaningful for my children as it is for me. Like our Vincentian culture is so strong, the way that I've raised my children, that they love St. Vincent, they represent for St. Vincent, they always talk about St. Vincent. but they've never been here. And that's not cool.
Yeah, so I'm with you on that. Definitely reconnecting. I feel like our mother did a phenomenal job. She made a lot of sacrifices to make sure, like, we came every other year. So we had one summer in Brooklyn, one summer in St. Vincent, one summer in Brooklyn. What it was kind of that
Yeah, and
sort
to
of
be fair, Brooklyn, there were so many people from St. Vincent that it was just like being in St. Vincent with a lot more concrete.
exactly, right? I actually thought at the time that Brooklyn was the United States. That's how, like, I was like, people say, "You're going to the States?" Yeah, I'm going to the States. Like, I thought Brooklyn was the States, right? But
Oh my
she did a
gosh, the way
phenomenal
that
job of
people
that.
used to say New York was America.
Yeah, you going to New York? New York
New
was
York,
the entirety of America. I didn't even know that there was more to that. So, but that's a whole nother conversation, right? So,
right.
how do you plan? How do you plan to move forward now that you're home before you return home? Because, as we know, home can be so many places. You're home now. You're going home soon. What does the future of home look like for you?
Well, the future of home is, on my two things on my agenda is definitely planning to bring my children home and also making sure that they have a home to go to when they get here. And that may not happen simultaneously. Like, I can't be like, okay, it's going to take me 5 years to build a home or save for a home or find a home or get the money for a home, and then my kids are not coming until then. Even if, I guess this is the biggest lesson from 25 years is that even if we have to come down here and stay in a hotel or an Airbnb or stay with a friend, it is better to come home than not to come at all.
Right.
That's the biggest takeaway. It may not be the way you come, it may not be perfect. We might want it to be perfect, but it may not be perfect, but it's going to be what it is. And whatever it is, it's going to be better than if it was not.
Then it was not right. I want to. I'm working to make sure that I bring my children home, but I also feel like there's so much history and so much to learn and so much about this land that I want to be, like I am in life and art, a conduit for others to know about. Because just like, this is one of the stops on the transatlantic, you know, slave trade that happened. Like, we are here because of that. And there's so much history and so much of a narrative that I think I also want to be part of that bigger conversation for my family, but for those who don't know. I've always felt like that's really, really important. We are more than some location in Jamaica, which we're not.
Right.
So I want to give a huge shout out to um, my friend and sister Ali for making this possible for you and for me, and for always being gracious to do that. I want to always shout her out because I'm home a lot of times because that's possible, and I'm grateful for that. And I look forward to future conversation. Anything you want to you left a nugget there. Anything else you want to say to our listeners before we uh, tune out today?
Yes. To your listeners, I would like to say that home is not just a tropical island that you're like happy to get away to and stuff like that. But home is where you belong, even if it's like uncomfortable or you're embarrassed about, the way that you left it or anything like that. Home could be your parents' house. If you're living in Toronto, home could be Markham. Home could be Peterborough. Home could be wherever. But when you know that when you go there, it's good for you, then you should make it a priority to get there. Like, who was that singer? Olena Adams. Like, I don't care
Get
how you
here,
get here, just
just
get
get
here if
here.
you can. And there are hills and mountains between us. And I don't know the words that come
Always
after that.
something to get over. But if I
Yes,
had my way, oh, surely we'd be closer. I need
I
you
need you
closer,
closer.
and
That's
I'm
what
gonna
I
need
want to
that.
leave with.
Yeah. Oh, I think yeah, that's so powerful. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for joining me. I'm looking forward to more conversations with more people. You can always reach me here. I'm going to leave you on the screen because I think you're just so awesome. You can reach me on openlygraylive@gmail with conversations. If you have a story about home and you want to share it with our listeners, please, openlygraylife@gmail.com. You can find us at Openly Gray Life on Instagram, Openly Gray Life on YouTube, Openly Gray Life on Facebook. And we're looking forward to having these conversations because we know that reconnection is so important. So I want to say goodbye to our guests. Thank you, Nicole, for joining me. And I will say bye to you and to home, home. Connect to it, connect to the things that make you feel good about being you, where you don't have to make apology for being at home. Be at home, my friends. Take care, and until next time, peace. Keep living, keep loving.